Good day. Welcome to the next lecture for Erasmus students at Faculty of Architecture, Wroclaw University of Science and Technology. Today I will tell you about the libraries, so the culture connection to your pavilions. Library is no longer some sort of silent space, but it's an active, vibrant meeting place where you have an access to culture, to knowledge, and it doesn't necessarily have to only mean books, but it's also multimedia, digital collections, and such. Of course, there were some tendencies to tell that the paper will decay in the nearest future and there will be no libraries. But it was very interesting. The most of the libraries are appearing during some economic depressions, and this is the time where the culture of books is the most popular. Of course, we can also see not only the digital libraries, but also the libraries that have books, magazines, journals, and some other types of publications. And as I may again remind you, as Gell said, uh, good public space is a space where we have contact, where we have knowledge and stimulation. So we go to the library not only to learn something, but also to get interested and to meet other people. Nowadays, the libraries are open, as the one that you can see here at the Technical University of Delft in Netherlands. And you can see the public hall, and all the books are accessible from that hall on the floors, and you can see them while you go inside of the book. What is very important in the library is to design a proper ergonomic of space, a friendly environment, and a space where you can spend almost a whole day if you need. Also, this kind of space should be smart, should be ecological, and should have a lot of natural light, which allow to spend the time inside. Here you can see the image from a library of Technical University in Cottbus by Herzog and Demirel. And here you can see the colors that they are used for the staircase. So it's a very vibrant element that allows creativity, allows interest. So all of these important smart elements of public library space. Um, what is very interesting, some of the libraries are very large, and the largest one in the world is the library in Toronto, which has over 95,000 of square meters. Of course, the libraries are not such a monumental spaces as they have been in the past. So now they are more connected to the public spaces. You can see that they have shop-like windows, so you can see inside and outside of the library, which makes the space very accessible and open to everybody. Also, it is important to use the high-quality materials, which do not age too quickly, and the solutions which will be attractive for newcomers. Of course, this is the library at our faculty, just to remind you. It's a newly remodeled object building, which was finished in 2016. But what is very interesting in it, it was based on the historic building. This is why the form of the building is looking very quite monumental. And there's a tower, but also new materials have been introduced, like this curtain elements, which remind us that it's a building for today. This is the building in Washington. It was opened in 1991, and this building is a quite contemporary building, but it is connected to the history. So it's supposed to look monumental and supposed to look like an old building. And on the contrary, here you can see the Dock Center, and the Dock Center is in Delft, and again a contemporary building. And you can see that it has a lot of glass, and on that glass there has been imprinted the layouts of the books, so you can see from the outside that it's a library. but at the same time, this building is quite modern, contemporary. It doesn't have such a historic outlook. And also the books, the imprint of the books is very delicate. It's not overdone. It's not too much. And as you can see, it's connected to some other important elements like cafe shops and other types of services which can be used while the library is closed as well. And building of Library of Technical University of Delft, we have already seen the inside with the books. Here we can see the front from the street side, which again is showing that the building is quite monumental, and at the same time it doesn't have this historic outlook. It's very contemporary. And the tower is just a mark. You can see here that is just an outline of the cone. It's not felt. And from the other side, from the side of the campus, it's a huge lawn, so people can sit on the roof, and the entrance is marked, but it's not such a monumental representational entrance on the middle. It's pushed to the side, it's more asymmetrical, it's more contemporary. And the roofing here, it reminds me a little bit of your projects with walkable roofs. So that's a very good example for you. And that's the mound here. And as you can see, people are using, it's quite nice. It's not too slopey, but it's a quite strong slope. This is the library in Opole in Poland, and here you can see that the idea was to compare the building to the book, or compare the building to the shelves with books. So you can see these two representational elements. It's monumental, but it's not too much monumental. It's not too much representational. It's the extension of the historic building that you can see on the side here. And you can see that the colors are very toned. Everything was painted in gray. So it looks very nice to the eye. Again, quite contemporary and again asymmetrical. And this glazed part is an open atrium which allows beautiful views from the library towards the park and towards the river. Here we can see some main functional plans and some main functional elements. And if you would like to put these kind of elements in your pavilions, then this very simple scheme would be very visible for you, because here you can see that there is an entry, there is circulation and some references, there is a staff area, there's a collection and seating. Here in your case, the whole collection could be like one computer on like one shelf with books, or one shelf with some magazines, and this could be some element that you could implement in your products, of course, if you feel like it. This is more built element for library. You can see that there is different places for young adults, for children, for adults. So there are these additional elements that you would have in the typical library. These two next slides will be basically rather for your future. So you can see here the full library scheme, the example of the library that has elements of the cafeteria, that has huge reading areas, reading rooms, that has additional seminar audiovisual rooms. You can see here the catalogs, the biography references. You can see quite large area for staff, which is basically not accessible for all users. You can also see here elements like a photography unit, where some archive materials and other types of materials can be photographed and stored into the digital form. And here you can see the multi-story library, and you can see that on one of the floors you have a huge reading room, which has an open stack, so there are shelves inside, which can be used by the users while they are inside of the library. And you can see the other floors with additional spaces, but also a lot of spaces with some sort of specific rooms and elements like reading maps, like seminar rooms, audiovisual rooms, which allow the multifunctionality of such facility. This is the layout of the Library of Technical University in Delft. And here you can see the elements of the library. So you can see the open stack. Of course, it goes upwards, as you remember. You can see the computer area. You can see the rooms for the staff, or there's some small cabins and reading rooms. Like seminar rooms, which allows you to create for yourself also some quiet space for reading. You can see the bookshops and of course a cafe. In the middle there's this cone that is finishing by the tower that you've seen from the outside. And you can see here the entrance to the cone. Of course, it's all accessible by the elevator, and inside of the cone there are some workrooms which allowed for larger groups of students to meet and to read together. I have already mentioned the reading room and the shared space. What is important while designing this kind of spaces is to create a clear view. So it's usually the rooms that do not have some columns inside. So they need this kind of design that they are free and they are large span spaces. They have to have working tables, and again, these long tables that have been in the libraries are no longer there. It's more like working spaces for groups of people. And the seating arrangements can have very interesting forms. We'll see some examples of that in a second. And there should be some comfortable spaces for casual readings. The OpenStack that I've mentioned, it's a concept of people being able to access the books while they're inside of the room, and it comes from 30s of 20th century. And what is important is that you need a larger distance between the shelves than you would have in some sort of spaces where the staff is giving you the books. So the shelves have to be distanced from each other by 1 meter 80. Here you can see again Delft. You can see that there is a checking counter. So if you want to get something to your home, you have to use that desk. It's quite large, but at the same time, it doesn't block the view. You can pass it through and go to the books and no one will stop you. The same situation in aforementioned Cottbus and the staircase that I have already shown. This is the library Graphit. It's in Wroclaw, and it's the same concept, but also you can see that there are some additional exhibition spaces, there are casual reading spaces, there is place for children, and there is place for other types, not only the books, but here we can see the CDs that can be borrowed. You can also see some freestanding seminar space. It's just some comfortable sittings and a desk for somebody who will lead the lecture or lead the meeting. And similar situation in Delft again. Here you can see the working spaces that are settled by the students. And the more traditional space in Washington, I'm sorry, the library is in Chicago and it's called Harold Washington Library Center. And here you can see that this space is also furnished with the computers. It's more traditional, but it's still very flexible and comfortable. And then again, the books are accessible for everybody in the open stack. One more the photograph from Delft showing this climate and the informal atmosphere of the library. And here you can see the spaces and the distances, the need for the space, depending on if you need to lower yourself to get some book, maybe you need to kneel. So this distance between the shelves has to be um, at least 90 centimeters, the minimum. Here you can see the situation where you have more people using the library, and again about around 1 meter 80 when you have open stack. So this is the one more slide with an open stack in the library. And here you can see the different ranges here in the library for children. So the books cannot be too high for for youngest generation. And here there are some information about the types of the shelves. So what is very important is that around 90% of books are less than 23 centimeters deep. Therefore, the proper proportion for bookshelves is about 20 centimeters deepness for 80% of shelves, 25 for 15, and 30 centimeters, so like albums, about 5% of the shelves in the library. Again, very important issue about people reaching for the shelves from the wheelchairs. And as you can see, you shouldn't go more than meter 50 with the books, so they would be accessible for people on the wheelchairs. Here for people in standing position, and also you can see the visibility of the eyesight, how high you can go with your eyesight while selecting the books. As I have already aforementioned, the reading rooms are the shared space, and the work tables should be about no longer than 3 meter 50 per 1 meter 20 of the wideness. And again, here we have the information that the full glazed walls are very needed in this kind of libraries. It's also not only about being friendly, but it's also about the amount of the light. The reading rooms are usually very deep, so the more light we have, the better is the visibility of the books. And as I have mentioned, here you can see one of the examples of the very interesting reading room where the architecture is also the bookshelves and at the same time is the space for sitting. Again, graphite library. Here you can see the solution for the ceilings. So you have skylights, which is a very good solution because it allows to spring the air, the light very evenly spread it around the room. And also you can see the elements for the artificial lighting that it gives also um, the same kind of feeling on the ceiling when there is no longer natural lighting. And here you can see the projector, which is one of the very important elements for meetings if they take place in the library. So here is more information about the tables, the distance between them, and the dimensions of different types of tables for working groups or for single reading. Additional functions that we can find in the public libraries are workshops, exhibition zones, the functional rooms, being able to create a small conference, and of course some sort of facilities and utilities for that conference. Here you can see the hall in the library in Opola, the one that with the books on the outside, not the small books, but the large elements of elevation. And you can see the view towards the greenery opened by the hall, but you can also see some additional spaces also for some sort of small resting. Additional functions, multimedia collections, for example, the projector to see these kind of collections, and the public zones with cafeterias and social media links. What is also quite interesting in the contemporary libraries is putting smaller gardens, Zen gardens, some sort of meditation reflection gardens, gardens that allow you to read books inside. Also, connection to the natural parks. What is also a good quality of the greenery is allowing some good microclimate, not only for the books, but also especially for the users. So here you can see the example of Poetry Center at the University of Arizona with the bamboo garden that is part of the library. And here you can see the library garden at Warsaw University. The design was by architect Marek Budzyński and Zbigniew Badowski. And the garden is accessible. It has some additional green panels, but you can see also that you can use the garden while using the library. One more view from Opole. Here is some additional literature if you would be more interested in library's design. I especially value the book by Thompson, Planning and Design of the Library Buildings from 1991, so I would recommend it to you. Thank you so much for your attention. Let's go now back to the classes.